Hey, we're going to combine a couple of my favorite things here for our ending of our program today. We're going to have a chat with Pat. And Pat, I understand you're going to be talking about an article from National Catholic Register written by Alyssa Murphy.
Yeah, and it's called The Saving Grace of Siblings: What the Only Child Syndrome is Costing Our Kids.
Mm.
It is Catherine Pacolic, who is an economist, a Catholic economist out of the Bush School of at Catholic University. She's a professor there, and it's interesting. I had Catherine on the Virtuous Life 2 consecutive shows in a row because this book, Hannah's Children, is about the birth dearth, right? That we are
Mm.
not replacing ourselves. What's going on, right? And so and like everything, it's kind of a slow, we don't even realize what our choices are doing overall. And so this article that she wrote is in the New York Times, and it was kind of delving in a little bit more about why, and not all people can have children, not
Right.
but we're dealing with. And it's funny because here's a line from Pacolic. When it comes to raising children with good character, they told me, and she's talking about her research and the moms she talked to of big families. They told me it is easier to raise five than one.
Mm.
Pollock recalls, and it's interesting because my one of my nephews just had his fifth child not that long ago, and he says the same thing. I said, he said, yeah, people think, oh, 5 kids. He said it gets easier. He said,
Yeah.
as you go along. He said, so people keep thinking, and he says, even cost wise, your expenditure is with the first kid,
Mm.
and then you got all the stuff.
Yeah,
So he
right.
said, so, even when people say, oh, it costs so much, he said, but I think that these statistics are very interesting. And these are the statistics Elisa shares in her article from Catherine's research. Over the past 50 years, the share of American mothers with only one child has nearly doubled
Mm.
from 11% in 1976 to about 20% today. Meanwhile, large families have receded. In 1976, 40% of mothers at the end of their childbearing years had four or more children. By 2014, just 14% did. The total U.S. fertility rate hit a historic low of 1.6 births per woman in 2024, well below the replacement rate. So I think, and that begs us to kind of start looking at, I think, what changed in the 1970s. What kind of were we focused on as a culture that started to see kids as, not being as important. And one of the things is that she says Europe's numbers obviously are even lower, which begs the question, language gives us words like orphan and widow, but what do we call this new era of the universal only child, and what are we losing along the way? And I think that's a big thing. What are we losing? And she goes on to talk about that, we're losing practical lessons that occur in homes when you have more than one child. They learn to share because they have to. It doesn't mean they have to like it. Right?
Yeah.
But they have to share. They share bedrooms, and they have to help around the house. They just can't sit around, right? So the idea was that these things just happen naturally in a home that had more than one child. And she talks about the interviews with these moms, and I've read the book, and it is just a phenomenal book. But she talks about the social fabric that children with siblings are born into is a built-in moral framework. I love that. It's a built-in moral framework. And this is a quote from Pakalik. I came to see that large families generate moral education the way an engine generates heat as a byproduct. So she's saying that you don't even have to focus necessarily on trying to program things for kids. It automatically happens. These character forming experiences happen in larger households. They have to learn to get along. They learn to play with one another. All these things that is just a part of having more children in the family. And Catherine was also a child of a larger family. And this is a quote from her. She says, "My mother had her last two children, my seventh and eighth siblings, when I was in high school. Their births were the happiest times of my teenage years. My social life could be up or down, but those kiddos always adored me. I wanted to live up to the role." And she says, "My youngest siblings kept me closer to home and provided ballast through the inevitable difficulties of those years. They're still my closest friends, the first to turn to in hard times." I think, oh my gosh, and that is one of the things that comes up later in the article, is this idea of so many teenagers today have anxiety and loneliness. And why is that? What's it all about? And Catherine said the thing she noticed in all of her conversations with these moms of larger families, it was always about selfless love. That was the thing that was highlighted. It wasn't just the mom or the parent's selfless love. It was the kids learning to do that for one another. And she shares a story of a mom who had an older son that suffered from depression and anxiety. But when she had a new baby, and he changed. It was like he had somebody to take care of and to hold, and she said it was like the newborn was a sun lamp in their home. And she talked to others who said, teenagers that were struggling with issues, when a new baby came into the house, so often this new baby was a source of life and joy for them. And I remember reading a story of the one mom who had, I think it was her seventh or eighth child, that had really a rare medical condition that required around-the-clock care. And like the baby needed to be flipped to build its upper body strength. And she said her other kids, when they walked by, they would just flip him. Said, and she
Teamwork.
said, she said, so morning and night they were flipping this kid, and she said nobody had to teach them to care for one another. They just did it. And then this little guy, he achieved more in his life than any doctor thought he was capable of. Yeah. So I think, this whole idea, and there's a lot more in this article by Alyssa, but I think, this really begs us. I'd love to look more at how did we get here?